All right, good afternoon, and thank you all for coming to this first installment of Learning Upgrade's Thought Leadership webinar series. We have an extremely exciting presentation for all of you this afternoon, and before we do jump in and get started, wanted to give a big thank you to the folks at Learning Upgrade for providing the platform for these wonderful educators that will be speaking to you all on the 3 C's to successful Common Core transition. Before we get these wonderful women introduced to you all, I wanted to make sure that you all knew that you are able to submit questions through your toolbar. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation. We will have some time at the end of our presentation to address those questions. Because we will have a limited amount of time to address those, if we aren't able to get them all, please know that after the webinar, we will be following up with each of you to get your recording of the webinar, get you these slides, and if there are any outstanding questions, we will be able to get those answered via email. And so without further adu, it's my pleasure to introduce 2 wonderful educators, both with the Sweetwater Union High School District in California. We have Christina Huckaby and Detisch, who are both special education teachers in Sweetwater schools. They're going to give us a wonderful presentation today on some of the excellent work that they're doing in their schools. And so without further ado, ladies, I'm going to turn this over to you.
First, thank you so much for attending our webinar. You got to take it easy on us because today is our first time ever doing a webinar. My name is Blakeslee Detisch. I'm a special ed teacher with Sweetwater Union High School District. I teach at Montgomery Middle School, 3 miles away from the border. We want to make sure that with this webinar, it's engaging, it's informative, it's productive. Christine?
Yeah, one of the things I want to make sure is that when we share all of the things that we're doing in our district to be successful in trying to get everybody to be on board with Common Core, you might not be able to do the exact same things in your district, and that's okay. We're just hoping that you can take some of the big concepts, the bigger ideas, and maybe be able to use those in your district. A couple of those ideas are that we truly appreciate that our district has given us the time and the space and the resources to be able to collaborate, which is one of the 3 C's we'll be talking about today. And so if you can find some of those things within your district, you don't have to follow the exact same pathway that we did, but there are multiple ways to get your teachers to success. And keep in mind, we have a lot to cover today, so we might be talking a little bit fast, but we want to make sure to get you all this information. So
we are educators.
Thanks, thanks for being patient.
So first we wanted to start with talking about in the beginning with special education and where it was. I remember and I recall as an assistant working in a classroom, my classroom was in the back of the school. I was forgotten. I was an assistant in the classroom. We were forgotten. We weren't included. We were left out, misunderstood. A lot of the teachers and the students labeled my students and said, oh, they're the special ed students. We were never included in any of the assemblies. And that's where we were at one point.
Yeah, I remember too, Blake, when I first started my very first teaching job that I got, I was given a room, and the thing that I remember that room having was a stove. I wasn't teaching cooking. I didn't have a moderate class that I was trying to teach independent living skills. I was teaching fundamental students every single subject that there was. It was a self-contained classroom. And so I realized at that point in time that I was going to have to be the one that was advocating for my students and begging, borrowing, and stealing to get resources. And I have to admit that in the 20 years of doing this, that things have come a long way, and I don't have to beg my district for things for my students, and it's very empowering.
Yeah, times have surely changed. Now we are, so now as a special educator, I'm excited with the changes. We are vital team members, we're respected, we are leaders, we're sought after, we're better understood as special educators. We're also positive role models. A lot of the teachers at my district look up to me for guidance, for lesson planning, for modifying the curriculum, for ideas, implementation. So I'm at a different level right now.
Yeah, and Blake is coming from a classroom perspective on this, and I'm coming from working as a special education academic support teacher district-wide, and I know that she gets to see that at her site, but I get to see that on a grand scale. I go to all sorts of events. I get to lead sometimes just subject-wide professional learning communities. Sometimes I'm doing something just at a site. Sometimes I'm doing something district-wide. But I have to say that when I'm doing things now, I see the special educators and the general educators working together. I see them borrowing each other's expertise. I see that our general educators truly want to have special educators there to ask them questions. If they don't see the person that is from their site that does special ed, they ask me, where are they? I really want their assistance in helping to do accommodations and helping to create assessments. So I really am seeing that we have come a long way in that we're respected and we're thought of as professionals, and it's great to see them.
We are united is what it is now as a school.
Yeah.
Rather than we are independent. We are by ourselves.
That's very true. So we're going to talk a little bit today. Blake and I got together and we said, okay, we've got a very big topic to talk about. How did we get our district, or how are we moving in the direction for Common Core? So we first came up with all the ideas that we had, and it was quite a lot of information and a lot of stream of consciousness. We decided that we needed to chop that down a little bit. And we came up with the 3 C's that have helped us to prepare for Common Core. So we feel that these are 3 of the most important things that our district has allowed for us to do to help us move in the right direction. And we hope that some of this information is beneficial to you as your district is moving in that direction.
So what we first wanted to talk about was collaboration at its finest. And the first area was our common PLCs. PLC stands for Professional Learning Community. Back in 2005, administrators got together and they wanted teachers with course-alike subject material to get together and have those conversations and talk about the lesson planning, the modifying the curriculum, talking about modifying and adapting assessments to students with special ed. So we came up with a plan, or my district came up with a plan, that every Friday would be a minimum day and students would be allowed to leave, and the subjects alike would meet up, and we would have those common conversations, and we would share our teaching strategies and our best practices and lessons that have worked well. We would also take an assessment and we would adapt it to a student who has those special needs. Also implementing some of the applications and the computer applications that we utilize at our district. So it was just having that common conversation, and it's every Friday. So we all get together every Friday and have that discussion. Not only at my school, but I can branch out to a different school site. I can go to another school within our district and ask them about different lessons and what they have done and best practices that they have utilized within their classroom, and bring it back to my school. So now I've branched out not only at my school, but I can go to somebody else's PLC and have that conversation.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of what our district has offered. Blake works at a middle school, and most of our middle schools do have their professional learning communities meet on Fridays, and it's a minimum day for students so that they can all come together. What those look like for the middle school as well as the high schools meet at different times, but what those look like is that it can be the special ed department coming together to do some of the things that Blake spoke about. It can be subject alike coming together, so maybe I'm a special educator that works with science and math, and I might take turns going from one of those subjects to the next one for the next week. And sometimes it looks like whole staff coming together for a faculty meeting and then sharing out some of those ideas that they had talked about. But the idea is that we are providing that time for teachers to be in one place, to be able to share those ideas. I'm sure that some of you are familiar with the fact that a lot of times you will see someone on your campus and go, man, it's been a month since I've seen you, because we get so caught up in what's going on in our classroom that we're not able to go out and to collaborate and to share. And as I said, that collaboration piece is one of the most important C's that I know in getting teachers ready for just about anything. It's great for our students as well. We should be modeling that as a district to share that with our teachers, and I feel that we are definitely moving in the last few years toward that direction by really allowing people the time and the space. One of the things, if you notice in red, our teachers, when they come together and they do these professional learning communities, we use the term growth mindset a lot with them. And I don't know if everyone who's listening is familiar with growth mindset, but Carol Dweck, you can search Carol Dweck and growth mindset and find out a lot about this. But the idea of it is that we are ever evolving, and that a lot of people, you'll hear them say, I'm not a math person, I'm not an English person, but the fact is that we are all what we set ourselves out to be. And one of the key components that I've taken away from growth mindset is that you could say, you know what, I can't do that. But instead of saying I can't do that, we want you to add the word yet. I can't do that yet. If you continue and have a growth mindset and you work hard and you work on skills and you don't think that you are just this set of things and you can't change that set of things that you are, if you have a growth mindset that says that you can change, then eventually you will be able to do whatever that thing is that you set your mind to. So kind of coming together as a district with that idea, and then using universal design for learning, which are great strategies that allow for teachers to say, when I'm planning a lesson, I really want to plan that lesson with every single person in mind that can possibly come to my classroom. Growth mindset, universal design for learning was actually a term that was created by people who did architecture. And the idea was that if I was going to create a building, I would want to create that building with every possible visitor or patron in mind. Instead of after building that particular site saying, oh, I didn't think about the fact that we might need to have wheelchair access, and then you add that wheelchair access, and maybe it's not aesthetically pleasing, or maybe you couldn't put it in the best of all places, and maybe access doesn't go everywhere. If you've thought about what would this look like for someone who's blind, what would this look like for somebody who's in a wheelchair, what would this look like for somebody, all sorts of different things. And you take that in consideration at the beginning of a lesson, the lesson is much more seamless, and the lesson includes much more, and everyone is involved. So these are some of the common terms that our district has been using, and to have a place every week to come together as professionals to talk about that and use that as an umbrella for all of that work which we are doing, it's really very empowering.
Yeah, last week one of the teachers during my PLC said she was having a bit of a challenge with her writing, getting her students in her gen ed class to do the simple paragraph writing. And so I said, oh, I have some great strategies to bring in. And that's where that conversation lies during that PLC. So I brought in my strategies just to bridge the gap, because she was having so many challenges. So I brought in all my strategies. That's what that common PLC is for, to have that conversation.
Yeah, and we noted on the last bullet here that general education and special education align assessments to Common Core, and what we put SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. Some of you might be on the East Coast, and you have a different consortium that works to create assessments, but this is basically we're talking about testing. That's the testing that happens, and for sure here in California, and they're trying to make it very consistent. So we can come together with our general educators and special educators, and we can help to align those tests and to say how can we get our students who maybe are taking a fundamentals course to better be prepared to take a course that's aligned to a student that's in a general education course. So the power of bringing those minds together with your subject-specific person and your special ed person, bringing those expertise together in one space really is beneficial for our students in preparing them for this kind of testing.
So next we wanted to talk about the cohorts and the zones that we utilize in our district. Christina is going to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, in order to give a space and a time and resources for our teachers to collaborate, our district has been working on finding the plan that works for us the best. And you know, it's a work in progress, but I feel as though dividing the work up the way we've done this and creating what we call a cohort. A cohort is where we invite what we call our subject leads. So at every site, and let me say it's a math teacher. So at every site, we will have a math lead. That math lead would come together and they would meet with all the other math leads in our district at what we call a cohort. Those people would meet with us, the curriculum specialists, the district-wide people who come and bring all of the new updates that come from Common Core, some best practices, some things that we've gone out and gotten the trainings on. We come together with them and we try to talk about what are some good lessons that we could share. How could we really make this more Common Core for our students? How can we accommodate for all students to really be able to understand this? Every single subject area has that lead. So English, science, math, social science, and they all have their own cohorts that they go to, and they're all doing the same sort of work where they come together in the morning and they talk about all these ideas that they think are really very important and relevant that need to be shared with all of the teachers that teach that given subject. Then for the second half of that day, they're allowed then to sit together and to kind of plan a professional development, which they are then going to take back to what our second bullet is, which is our zones. So then those subject-alike teachers go back to 3 or 4 sites in a given area, and then they provide for them professional development. So they're given a time and place to come together. They share out what they've come together and learned. They might have a great lesson that they can share that all those other teachers, fundamentals included, can then take back the very next day if they want to and share in their classes. It's a time that they can come together and collaborate about how can I accommodate for my special ed kids? How can I accommodate for my English language learners? It's lots of minds in a room being able to say, okay, we're all moving together to try to reach this certain goal. How can we best do that? We will be talking about building capacity a little bit, but I think cohorts and zones are moving us in that general direction that, you know, having a subject-alike lead at each site to be able to be that person of expertise in each subject is really moving us toward Common Core.
The next area we wanted to talk about is within our special ed classes or our special ed department. We have 2 different models. We have the inclusion model of co-teach or collaboration. I'm going to touch base on the collaboration, and then Christine's going to talk about co-teach. With collaboration, I remember 17 years ago entering a classroom and the teacher, the gen ed teacher, just saying, hey, just go to the back of the class and wait until somebody raises their hand and help them out. So I felt like a glorified assistant at that time. Well, once again, times have changed. Collaboration means to me you're working with the students in the class, but not just special ed. You're working with all students to give them the support they need. You may even pull out the student and work with them on an individual basis, or a group of students who need a lot more of the support, a lot more structure, a lot more refocusing on the task. Also, modifying the lessons and changing them to support our students, and including all modalities, the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic, and including that within the lesson. So creating that lesson with the teacher. Also a little differentiated grading. You can talk about that. Collaboration, you go into 1 to 3 you go from 1 to 3 teachers per class or per period. And you're only supporting the students in that class. You're not there 100% of the time, whereas co-teach you are. So there is a huge difference between the 2. Christina's going to talk about co-teach and the differences there.
Yeah, and it's not to say that collaboration or co-teach is, either one of them are the better model, and all of our sites are doing either collaboration or co-teach or both. And a lot of it's site dependent. Those principals get to decide what they would rather do based upon what their teachers' expertise are. Because one of the key things that I'm going to talk about when I talk about co-teach is that one of the things we remind our principals and people who are creating our schedules is that in order to have an effective co-teaching environment, you really need to have both teachers have buy-in and excitement about this. Mm-hmm. So we have always likened this. Every year my team and I of special education academic support teachers, we bring teachers teachers in the district together, general ed and special ed. We bring them together and we train them on co-teach, and we try to give them some ideas. We talk about best practices. We share with them what's been going on in classes where we have two super effective teachers working together that have a love of co-teach, and show how, when that comes together in the right fashion, that it's really spectacular, and everybody involved gets great things out of it. But we always liken it to a marriage, and there have been times where we even had them sign a fake marriage certificate between each other, and we laugh about that. You know, but the key is that it is like a marriage. You're spending so much time with this person as a co-teacher, and you're having to model what it is to be an adult that has a good relationship with another adult and is productive, when some of our students really need to see that. You also have to agree to disagree sometimes. You have to be a united front so that the students understand that when a message comes out, that's the message, and that they can't pit mom against dad. Well, if this one said no, I'm going to get that one to say yes. So it really, I mean, it's kind of like being a parent that's married, and that you know, these are all your children. So we really do want it to be the general education and the special education teacher coming together, and taking full responsibility and ownership for that. So as I mentioned, when we do this co-teach training every year, there's several different models of co-teach, and you can look online for those. The three that we've chosen to focus on in our district are supportive, parallel, and team teaching. I'll just briefly tell you, supportive teaching it's kind of that model that you'll see when you come in and there are two teachers in a room, and one may be standing up in front of the classroom and giving the lesson, while the other one's maybe walking around and making sure that the kids are on task and know what they're doing, maybe asking a clarifying question here or there. You know, you might have talked about it with the gen ed teacher before the class starts and said, hey, where do you think some of the pitfalls might be? Where do you think students are going to struggle the most? And then maybe that's where I want to chime in and ask a clarifying question, or say, so Mr. So-and-so, what I hear you saying is, so those are kind of the things that you can do with supportive teaching. With parallel teaching, the teachers divide the room into half. So one teacher takes half of the room to one side, one teacher takes half of the room to the other side, or it could be maybe one teacher takes them to another room. But the idea behind this is that you can either be teaching the exact same content and you just have a smaller group, or you could maybe have varying levels of that content. Maybe one group needs to have a little remediation or some reteach, and the other group is an accelerated group and they can move on a little further. Or maybe one group that is completely done with that lesson moves on to some sort of different activity, and then the group that needs some more remediation or reteach or some peer help or something like that, then they get that with parallel teaching. Lastly is team teaching, and that's the classroom that you walk into, and it looks seamless, where you see two teachers that are almost invisibly passing the baton between each other, and they're sharing the information. The students are asking both of them questions, both of them are answering. One might be writing on the board while the other talks. They might switch and do that, but again, it's this seamless, almost they can answer each other's, or they can finish each other's sentences. None of these is something that we say is the best form of teaching. You know, you might say, well, team teaching sounds like it's the thing to shoot for. And yeah, it's a great form of teaching, but I don't expect to walk into any of my teachers' rooms and see team teaching happening all the time. In any one given period, I might see supportive, parallel, and team teaching happening all in the same period. It's going to depend on the material. It's going to depend on how prepared you are. It's going to depend upon teacher and what they're ready to do for that day. But these are the different models that we have. And when you have buy-in and you have two teachers that are really excited about this, it can be something that is just a pleasure to see in action.
Yeah, you bring in your special ed methodologies and your strategies, and it just increases that level of understanding amongst all students, not just your special ed kids.
Yeah. And I see people that they get along so well and they're having fun and they can laugh with the students. And if you ask students, they feel like, wow, this is really this is something that I feel like I'm lucky to be a part of. I went out to do some videotaping because during these trainings, we like to bring in best practices, and we like to go out and videotape teachers that are doing this and ask them for advice and maybe videotape them in the middle of doing something. And I went out and I thought one of the best things I heard was I asked a general education math teacher, I said, hey, just give me one piece of advice that you'd like to give to new co-teachers coming together. And he said, well, if I had to give him one piece of advice, I would say, get over yourself. And he said, what I mean is that, you know, as a general ed math teacher, I come in and I say, this is my classroom and I know what I'm doing. And until, he said, until I could let those barriers down and let my co-teacher in and listen to some of the things that she had to offer, he said, it was a different environment. He said, but man, I'll tell you, once I got over myself and I gave the reins to her as well, he said, the things that were happening in this room were electric. He was absolutely just inspired to be a part of it. And, you know, people were watching these videos going, wow, we were inspiring them. So even the teacher that might be a little bit reticent to be excited about being in a co-teach classroom, you know, show them people that are excited about it and how great that can be. Having two adults in a room, having that one expert in the subject area, that one expert in how to accommodate students with special needs. It's just...
And working together as role models, because this is the real world.
Right, exactly.
So,
all right.
Go back one.
Gotcha. We got to go back one slide. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so capacity building at the site level. We're going to talk a little bit more about the cohort leads and how they implement their lessons within my own district, within my own school site.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about what cohorts are and the idea, you know, I kind of was pre-loading you to the idea about building capacity. But the idea that our district came up with to say, I want the expert to be at the site, rather than, I mean, we used to have a model where people would come and they would get trainings by what we called the district-wide academic support teachers that were specialized in English, math, science, social science, and then they would be expected to go back and share that at their site. That wasn't always happening, and sometimes they would come back and you know, maybe the information wasn't as clear as it needed to be because the person was merely taking notes at this full day training. So then we said, what if we bring an expert, somebody that we want to be a site lead from every single site in every single subject, and when we bring them together for this cohort, we're not training them, they're part of developing the training. They're looking at all the information that needs to be shared, and they're deciding how can this best be taken back to my group of people, because I know how they learn and what they need because I meet with them every week in a professional learning community. So it then builds that capacity for, now every site has somebody that if I'm a science teacher and I need to ask a question, I don't have to call the district office. I can go to that science teacher that has been given a point two. They get a stipend so that they can have a period where they're just helping to do science stuff. Lots of stuff can be done there. They can say, hey, do you want me to cover you for a period? I can substitute for you, and you can go and you can observe somebody on our campus, or you can go to another site and you can check out what they're doing there. I can answer questions. I can take some data so that when we're together in our professional learning community, we can see what's working, what's not working, you know, what are the areas and the concepts that we need to do some more reteaching in across campus. So it's a really nice thing that at that site they have that capacity and they feel like there's expertise there. They don't have to go elsewhere to find it.
So at my site, these leads, they lead our faculty meetings. What they do is they come in all areas, the science lead, the English lead, they lead a lesson. And they're really interactive lessons that they lead. They bring it back from their cohorts and they lead us within the lesson. And that creates that uniformity amongst all the staff members. So next, we wanted to talk about the district-wide learning management system that we've implemented within our district.
Yeah, and I don't know how many of you have heard of a learning management system. Learning management system can look something like Facebook, which many of us have had familiarity with, but it's kind of Facebook with some sophistication and the ability to do lots of sharing about what's going on in a classroom setting. Our district has decided to go with Canvas. Canvas, which is a very sophisticated learning management system, it gives our teachers the ability to create what is almost an online class for their students. So they can keep lessons on there for their students. They can go on and they can say, okay, I have an assignment and it's due on such and such day, and they can put that date up there so students know when it's due. They can have a window of time, and then they can close that window so that then the student has to come and talk to them if they turn it in late. Say a student's going to be absent, I can videotape myself doing a lesson, and then I can put that up there so that the students go on and they can rewatch me doing that lesson. And so it's almost like that they were there. They can pause, they can take notes, they can do what they need to do. So there's lots of different ways that I can communicate with students using this Canvas, but the district can also communicate with teachers and even with parents. One of the examples I wanted to share is that my team, the Special Education Academic Support Team, we've created a page called Special Services, and it's a Canvas page in which our teachers can go and they can click on multiple subjects and they can get so much information. Say they want some help with IEP writing, they can click on IEP writing and get all sorts of supports. I've invited not only special educators, but general educators, counselors, school psychologists, principals, and we can see when we look at our data that many people are going on there and they're looking up these things. If I wanted to know what goes on in a fundamentals math class, I could click on fundamentals math. It could give me the course description. What does a performance task look like? What are some of the expectations? All sorts of resources. So it's a great resource to help to be able to share and collaborate with people on a grander scale than we could do just face-to-face.
So within our district, every student from 7th to 9th grade has an iPad. That is where they can access all their lessons. Not only that, they have the modules, they have quizzes. Once they've accessed their lesson, they open that lesson in what is called Notability, and that's where they can write on the worksheet or whatnot. After they're done using Notability and they're done filling out the worksheet, then they can submit it. So in other words, we have become paperless within our district. The students no longer use the hard copies. They have it all on the iPad and it's submitted. Once they've done that, it's there. And if a parent has a question, they can also ask the question through the Canvas page, and I can respond promptly. Also, there's a speed grader. It'll grade the quiz for us teachers, or we can grade the lesson ourselves. But it's there. Once the kid has done that, I can also save it, and we're going to talk about Google Drive and how my kids all have access to Google Drive.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, one caveat is that 7th through 9th, we do have a district initiative of one-to-one iPads. We're working on pushing that through to more high school. But so those classes that do have access to that, many of them have gone paperless, which go green. I think it's amazing. One of the things I like to call that, and some of the other resources that we use in our district where we can, save things electronically, I like to call it a virtual file cabinet. And for me, it's great because things are organized in such a fashion that they're easy to find. It's not something that you have to go through your file cabinet and look through stuff and, oh my God, it's not alphabetized and who knows where that is, and maybe it ended up in the circular file cabinet, which we all know what that is.
Right.
That's not a good one. So even when I go out and I do trainings, I will do paperless trainings. I can bring a site together, I can bring a district together, it doesn't matter, but any training that I do, I can say, go on to Canvas and click on such and such, and all of the, the PowerPoint, all of the handouts, everything that you need will be up on that site or the Google Drive, which we're going to talk about. And as long as you invite teachers and they have access to that, they have all of that information. And it's not like you have to hand them a folder of really thick materials that you don't know where that's going to end up.
Yeah, and another quick comment on Canvas, you can also make your quizzes public. So then another teacher creates a quiz, I'm able to access that quiz. So that's another bonus.
Yeah.
Okay, so for Google Drive, A lot of my students use their Google Drive. Once they're done with a worksheet or a writing sample, I have them send it straight to Google Drive. I have access to edit it, to look at it. Parents have access to see what they're doing, so then it bridges that gap between the communication between parents, teachers, and students. Also, it's great. Let's say I'm in a different state. I can access the information through my Google Drive. So all my students have access to Google Drive. Every single one. Everything is sent there. If I'm sitting in an IEP meeting with an advocate or a lawyer, I can bring up some work samples really quick because I've been given that access.
And we all have been given that access to the district, and it has a lot of memory. I mean, I haven't run out of memory, and I put a lot of things up there. So it's a really great resource to be able to share.
So last year, our district decided to have an IEP Leadership Team, and what we did was we submitted one of our best IEPs to the district, and they said, hey, yes, you've been approved, now you're a part of this IEP Leadership Team, which was exciting for me at that time. Once I joined the IEP Leadership Team, what we did, and this is a team of volunteers, they're psychologists, they're teachers, we all met together. Oh, and also program manager. Sorry, Christina, to leave you out. We all got together and we reviewed. Well, first we looked at our own IEPs and we created a rubric on what is our expectations for a quality IEP. Once that rubric was put in place, then we had every special ed teacher from the district submit an IEP, their favorite, their best. And from there, we used that rubric and we reviewed the rubric, and then we commented on their IEPs on, where they excelled and where they could work a little more on, or areas that they could work more on. And then we handed it back to the special ed teacher, so then they could create a quality IEP the next time. Did you want to?
And well, I just wanted to say what a great idea that we ask teachers to show students what expectations they have of them when they're doing an assignment. And a lot of times that turns out to be a rubric saying, this is what I need you to do to show me some quality work. And it needs to have all these things. What a great idea to do that with your district when you're asking them to create quality IEPs. And then to use peers to create a rubric and agree upon a rubric that looks like quality IEP. And again, so much more capacity building, because now we've got people from all over the district that are becoming what we call kind of site experts in IEPs. And again, then, so if I'm at Blake's site and I need help with an IEP because I'm turning it in for submission for review this year, I could say, hey, Blake, could you do me a favor and be a second pair of eyes on this IEP to make sure that, say, my present levels are beefed up enough, and I just wasn't sure. Maybe I could have a little more support or just, some advice on this. So it's been really great. All of us have learned so much in the process, because as we're collaborating, we're learning even better practices to beef this up. The idea is that an IEP is a story about a student. It tells their story, their educational journey. And if the story is complete and if the story is accurate, we as educators are able to give them the most quality education that we possibly can. If the story is incomplete or if the story is inaccurate, then we lose time. We waste time doing things that student didn't need, or trying to reassess that student to make sure that we're doing things for them that they need. I think that our teachers are really starting to see the big picture, and that IEPs are not just busy work that they have to do, and that this really is something that's important. And I hope that more teachers will get involved in the process of coming to volunteer and to help calibrate and to review these and become a site expert. I'm hoping that everybody at every site becomes someone who feels like an expert in IEPs as we continue with this process.
So I get the privilege to talk about Learning Upgrade. Not only am I a teacher, I'm a mother as well. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. The other day, my daughter came home and she showed me her report card, and it said she lacked some of her sight words. Well, she only knew 6 of them, and she only knew a couple of her sounds. So I started thinking, what would be a good, because she loves her iPad, what would be a good computer application for her to use. And the first thing that came to mind was the Learning Upgrade. She has been using it ever since. Now she's been on it for about 4 months because I needed something. I love Learning Upgrade because it is user-friendly. My daughter is 5 and she's able to log in. She loves those catchy songs. She loves the colors. It's so interactive. She has excelled. Now she knows at least 25 words. So now I can go to her teacher, and what I can do is show her the documentation. I can show her that incredible graph of where she was and how much she has excelled in each area, starting with the sounds and going into the sight words. This documentation has helped me out in showing and improving what she is capable of doing. I got to tell you, last couple of years, we have used Learning Upgrade as we've used it as, oh gosh, I lost my mind. We've used it within our school as with all the students who have this reading, needing help with their reading comprehension. We've used it. I mean, it's incredible, Learning Upgrade. With the math, we've used it as interventions. That's what we've used it.
Yeah.
We kept the students on Fridays because we noticed the students needed help. I'm sorry, but they needed help with their fractions. So we brought in Learning Upgrade and did an intervention every Friday afternoon. We saw a huge improvement in their scores. It was incredible.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate, if you're a case carrier, how great is it to be able to take charts and graphs to show evidence that your student truly has created something wonderful, that they've got mastery of something, because Learning Upgrade doesn't let you move ahead unless you show that you have mastery. One of the things Blake does in her classroom, did you say that about the going for the gold?
Oh my goodness, yeah. So a lot of the students, they say, Miss Detisch, I got a bronze award. And I say, wait, you want to go for the gold? And they do. They come back and they go for the gold and they go all the way through, and then you get that reward at the end. So that was something beneficial to show my colleagues and show parents at the IEP meetings. I could actually hand them a certificate and say, look what they've done. And here's a graph that goes along with it. So I created a lot of my IEP goals using that information. So it has been extremely beneficial.
Well, and I just got to say, my favorite piece of Learning Upgrade, not only the colors, the music, but I have to say it's rapping songs. I mean, come on. I see kids singing raps as they go down the hallway. I see them just repeating it. When I was in college, I used to create songs to help me to remember stuff, because that's how my brain works. Research shows that if you stimulate that part of the brain, for arts and music and things like that, that you truly can help students to become better learners. This is why STEM has now become STEAM, which now stands for your science or technology, or your engineering, and now the arts are in there with technology. Right. It's so important, and I think that with Learning Upgrade, they really understand that.
Do you know the exciting part? With the intervention, I would see a student sitting there writing it out and really taking their time to get the answer right, because they wanted to go for the gold.
Yeah.
So they were doing the computer component, listening and trying and writing out every single equation.
Yeah.
It was so incredible because they were going for that gold and they were striving for the best.
We all want that recognition,
Yeah.
I think, and it's nice that this program actually offers recognition for doing better.
Yeah.
So
the next one is in my class I do the Read 180 model, and that is they have certain rotations. We start off with a whole group. We all read together. We do the choral reading. We do I do a kid blog instead of a daily journal write. I do a blog and I ask a quick question that drives the background information or background knowledge that goes right into my lesson. From there, we've got 20-minute rotations, one being a computer, silent reading, and a small groups, more individualized learning.
Yeah. I have to say that when I go out to sites and I talk to my teachers, one of the things that I hear them saying is the best about Reading Math 180 is that after they've done all the work on the front end to get the program up and running and they understand what's going on and they've got their rotations in line and good to go, that it really, it's less planning than your average thing. It's minimal planning. It's not no planning, but it's a little easier than your average class to plan, and teachers really appreciate that, especially when you have a special education teacher who might have 3 or 4 preps. How nice is it to have something that's kind of creative for you?
And the last one we wanted to talk about is just utilizing that technology. It drives that motivation. Our students, hit that little plateau, and they need more. And so that's when we brought in the applications. We use the Poplet. They explain everything, the notability, like I talked about, the graphic organizers. We bring in that kid blog, Erasma. We have a little fun. But not only that, it's a motivational factor, but now these students are marketable. So one day they're going to go out and they're going to say, I know all these computer applications, just look. So a lot of them are Common Core standards resources too. Oh, and the text to speech. A lot of my students have a difficult time reading, so you've got the text to speech. Or they have a hard time getting out what they want to say in a written version. You've got the speech to text.
Yeah.
I mean, these are ways they're formative assessments too on trying to find out what they have learned, what knowledge they have gained. So using this technology. The students are excited. Also, the students who don't talk much use what is called telegamy, and there's a little telegamy. It's like the virtual kind of. It's a person a cartoon who will talk for them. So it's kind of exciting.
It's kind of fun. It's like they're having their own little Bitmoji or I have to say that when we first started this one-to-one initiative and I would go out to my middle schools, and this had been in place for several months, I would see that there were some classes that hadn't been using anything at all on their iPads. So I would go out to those classes and go, hey, do you mind if I take over your class for a little bit? And I would just here's Explain Everything, which is an app that you can record your voice, you can draw, you can type, you can bring in pictures, you can go from slide to slide. It's kind of like what the Khan Academy uses, if any of you are familiar with that platform, but you can explain what you're doing. So for example, I went into a math class and they were doing fractions and I said, hey guys, let's talk about this. So we talked a little bit about the fractions. I said, now do me a favor and take this basic problem and I want you to explain step by step as you're writing it how you're doing this, just like you're explaining it to another student or to a teacher to show that you understand how to do this problem. So the kids were doing it and then they were playing it back and listening to their voices and watching it and they were amazed. They loved the sound of their voice. They loved to see that. And then now as a case carrier, I take that and I can put it in my folder to share it in IEP. And now that parent knows that instead of just looking at a worksheet or instead of seeing something that I say, yeah, Johnny did this, Johnny did it because it's his voice and it's explaining it to you as he goes along and he does this. And we can share it with the rest of the class if we want to. We can make it public. These apps really allow kids to do so many things that are just really inspiring and amazing. And I think about how great would that be if I were in middle school. It seems to me like I tell teachers if they're not excited about it, it's like having a computer lab in every single classroom. And as I get ready to leave these classrooms, after I've done these lessons, the kids are so inspired that they always look at their teachers and they go, oh my God, can we do this kind of stuff more often? So now that teacher's in a spot where they're like, well, now I kind of have to.
Right.
Sometimes they give me a dirty look and I say, hey, come on, look at how great this could be. You've got the buy-in, you've got the excitement, you've got the engagement. Now just take that and make it work for you. And so the teachers that are willing to get on board and do that, they see some really great things happening. And again, that's just that idea of having a computer lab in your classroom at all times when you have that iPad. I would have loved to have that when I was in middle school.
I would have loved to have the learning upgrade because not too long ago we had the interventions after school once again, and what the teacher would do is put the learning upgrade lesson on their smart board, share the lesson, and then she would redo the lesson, and then they would go back on and they would do the lesson themselves independently. So that was another thing with the learning upgrade that was incredible to see.
Yeah. Well, in conclusion, guys, I just wanted to do a brief overview. I just have to say that the most important things that I think our district has done for us that hopefully yours can do is that they've allowed us the time, the space, and the resources to be able to collaborate. And it's kind of like a form of respect for them, saying, we know that you need this, and you guys are our experts. You're the ones that are on the front line. You know what the students need. Let's give you some time. Let's give you a place so that you can come together and figure out what works best for kids. And I can't think of a better time to do that than the time now where we're moving to Common Core together, because general ed and special education teachers, EL teachers, we're all on the same platform right now because we're all just learning. And this is an adventure that we're all in together. So what better time to have us all really start to come out to this brave new world and doing all these things and learning how to collaborate and using each other's expertise. So I hope that there was something here that you could use as a takeaway back in your district, and I would be glad to share anything with you guys if you need anything more on growth mindset, universal design for learning, some of the apps that Blake and I talked about. Our website, our email is available to you. But we really appreciate you taking this time
very much
to come. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, ladies. You covered quite a bit of ground in a short amount of time, and we have had a few questions come in. And just to kind of let everybody know, we will be following up via email with the slides that you saw today, the recording of the webinar, and any questions that trickle in beyond time. We will certainly share those via email. And for those of you that are still with us, it looks like we have pretty much everybody still with us. We will have a quick review of Learning Upgrade that's available for any of you that wanted to stay on and see some of those raps and games and songs that Blake and Christine had mentioned. So if you stick with us, you'll be able to hear from the CEO at Learning Upgrade, Mr. Vinod Lobo. But ladies, before we let you off the hook completely, we've got a couple of questions that popped in. And one of them came in earlier during your presentation, and it really was around some of the things that you've implemented. That did you get any areas of pushback from your staff? And if you did, what were they and how did you get past on any of the models that you talked about?
That is a great question, pushback. I think that with everything new, there's going to be pushback because change is always hard. And we have definitely seen pushback. And I know even Blake has seen it at just her site. So in particular, I've seen it with my special education teachers because it's scary. It's scary for general ed teachers. It's scary for special ed teachers because with Common Core, we're asking teachers to not only teach a subject matter, but we're asking them to be pretty expert in that.
And think out of the box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just saying teach a student how to do a math problem and to know how to, you know, to know that formula. We're saying, well, could you maybe teach a little bit about this and then have the students kind of discover the formula on their own
and then write about it, implementing their
and for many of our teachers who don't feel strong in a particular subject area, there's a lot of pushback, and I think that comes from fear. You know, I'm not prepared to do that, and from our special educators who have multiple subjects that they're teaching throughout the day, I think that also comes from fear and just, you know, we don't know where we're going with this, so we're feeling a little lost. And I think what our district has done to help with that pushback is to just try to provide as much professional development and assistance as we can. You know, I know that my job in particular is to do whatever I can at the sites that I'm personally responsible for, which are 8 of them in the district of 26 schools that we have. So that means if any type of special education question comes up, I'm out to help them. I'm also the district's support person for science. So that means I work with everybody in the district at every single site, whether they're general education or special education. If they have a science question, I go out and I try to help support them. And I also work with our science specialists here in the district. So those are the kind of things we're doing. And I mean, I hope that Blake can attest to the fact that she's been given support at the site level.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So really, I think it's getting support and teaching.
The second question kind of dovetails off that answer that you just gave, Christine, and thank you so much for that. It was, again, the one that came a little bit earlier in the presentation that was around some of the topics that you cover in your professional development, that you've mentioned that a number of times, that how much feedback is given by teachers, you know, how much is planned before the year starts. Can you kind of give an idea of what that looks like?
Okay, so
it's ongoing planning. It's just not from the beginning. It's ongoing.
Yeah, and I think if you're talking, especially, you know, the cohorts, the PLCs, any of that time where we're coming together to collaborate, obviously, we have some ideas in mind at the beginning of the year of where we want to go, and some of those things that I talked to you about that are district-wide initiatives, if we're talking about, say, growth mindset or universal design for learning, or using some of the strategies like checking for understanding, or having students work in structured pairs, these kinds of things. We kind of have an idea of where we want to go at the beginning of the year, but I think that's the beauty of what we're talking about with this collaboration piece, is that it is ongoing, and it's taking some of these big ideas and deciding how can we chunk that, how can we get that out there, what are updates that are out there now, what are you seeing happening in your classroom, where do you think we need to change? So I think that professional development is changing in our district, in that it's not something that the district says, okay, teach them this, show them that, this is where we're going. It's more of a, okay, well, we know we have to get to Common Core. That's kind of like our backwards, planning sort of thing. We've got to get everybody to Common Core. How do we get there? Let's involve the teachers and the people that are experts in the classroom to help decide that. And so that's where that planning and collaborating in the professional learning communities, in the cohorts, in the zones, and all of those things, I think that that's where that all comes together. And there's always time in every training that I do and every training that anyone that I know does, that teachers get to plan together and plan with us and talk about next steps. Yeah, I think that's critical.
And during that lesson time, that PLC time, that's when you can share your areas of strength and those lessons. Maybe I need a little extra help in a certain area of the narrative writing. Well, somebody else, that may be their strong suit, so then they can share the lessons that they've done during that PLC time. During that,
Absolutely. And we want to make sure that we've got time for the product run through here. So we're respecting attendees' time. And I've got one last question that will actually segue into that demonstration. But a question came up as you were talking through the LMS, some of the tools that you're using. Can you talk just a little bit? We've got about a minute before we can transition. Could you just talk a little bit about how those tools were evaluated, how you landed on, say, Read 180 or Learning Upgrade? And then the step further, how did you look at integrating those into your classrooms?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff that came out has been kind of teacher approved. We have a lot of teachers who work in the district that are kind of subject specialists who went through at the very beginning when we started the one-on-one initiative, and they gave pros and cons for this. It was kind of vetted through pilot programs at specific sites, and some data was taken on that. A lot of credit is given to our educational technology department and David D'Amico and his people, figuring out what works. And many of those applications that we push out to sites have changed over the last few years because we found out what works best and what students are asking for, because students have asked to be able to push their own apps. And so we find out what they want, and sometimes we give them the ability to do that for themselves as well, and give them a little more capacity as a student.
And with the Learning Upgrade, the students all had access to it at home. So not only did the students get to work on their Learning Upgrade, but parents watched, and they got a printout when they were done.
Yeah, and I know that my special education director asked me to go out because we were looking for a program to use in math, and I remember going out and looking at the various programs that were out there being piloted, and every single person that I asked about Learning Upgrade had nothing but positive things to say. That's staff and that's students alike. So I overwhelmingly had to come back with saying Learning Upgrade because people love it. And so it kind of, and so it kind of works like that, where people need to feel like they're part of the process and have buy-in and that they like a product.
And now my kids are part of the process using Learning Upgrade.
Yeah, and the fact that Read 180 has been so successful in our district, it was just kind of a natural thing to go to Math 180.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, ladies. That was great. And I know there are other questions. And so, folks, please do watch your email here over the next couple of days. Like we've mentioned a few times, you'll hear from us with a recording of the webinar. You will see Blake and Christine's contact information in there. And any additional questions that have come in, we will make sure that answers are communicated to you directly via email as well. And without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Mr. Vinod Lobo, the CEO at Learning Upgrade. I just want to give another big thank you to all of you folks for coming and attending this first edition of Learning Upgrade's Thought Leadership webinar series. Big thank you to you ladies again. And please do watch for your email. We will be picking up this Thought Leadership series again after the new year. and would love to have all of you join us again. So please do keep an eye on your email. We will communicate that out here soon. Vinod, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Christina and Blake. This is our first webinar. We're really excited. We want to just give you a real quick taste of one of our lessons. So this lesson we're going to is volume of a right rectangular prism, which is a 5th and 6th grade Common Core standard. And what we want to show you is how that lesson basically works within our music and our game. This is a lesson that, for example, 5th and 6th graders at middle schools would use. So let's look at volume of a prism 5, which is from our Math Up Grade 6 program.
Up the volume. Here we go. A right rectangular prism looks like a box. It has 6 faces that are all rectangles. We can measure the volume with the unit cube. The sides measure 1 unit by 1 unit by 1 unit. The right rectangular prism measures 3 units long by 2 units wide by 3 units high. Fill up the right rectangular prism with unit cubes, no gaps in between. First fill up the base layer. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 unit cubes. Now fill up the second layer. Once again, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 unit cubes. And the third layer. One more. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 unit cubes. The box is full. The volume is 18 unit cubes. Let's try another way. Okay. Volume equals length times width times height. 3 times 2 times 3 equals 18. Just multiply all 3. If units are in centimeters, volume is in cubic centimeters. If units are in inches, volume is in cubic inches. If units are in feet, volume is in cubic feet. Volume out.
Okay, that was just a little taste of one of the songs from Learning Upgrade, and we'll just give you just a few seconds of what comes right after the song.
With unit cubes by pressing the Add Cubes button. Count the cubes and drag in the length, width, height, and volume, and press Go.
So this is an activity where students would actually have to add cubes in and learn the concept of volume and get the length, width, and height from adding cubes, then drag in a length and width and height. And if they got it wrong, they would get remediation in a voice and also in animation. So I guess we're going to get this wrong just so you get a quick feel for remediation.
Incorrect. The length is 2 units. Width is 4 units. Height is 2 units. The base is 2 times 4 equals 8. Each of the 2 layers is 8, so 2 times 8 equals 16. Volume is 16 unit cubes.
Okay, so that gives you just a quick feel for one of our lessons. And I wanted to show you what Christine and Blake and teachers like that would see in terms of a real-time dashboard. This is an actual student report, and it shows the Common Core standards at the top. So what you just saw was 5 MDC4, 5th grade volume of a prism. And this student got 100% on that. So our dashboard actually shows you for every Common Core standard exactly the score of a student. And then what the student sees is a map, and that map will show how they did on every lesson. So there's 60 lessons in Math Up Grade 7. This student is on lesson 29, and has a bronze medal on a lot of these levels, which means 75 to 90, and then a silver, which is 90 to 95, and then a gold. So this student, when you heard Blake say, go for gold, this student will have to finish all 60 lessons, but then come back and review every one of these and make them all gold, above 96%. So when you have a special ed student going for perfection, going for gold in all these levels, that's when they reach mastery. This is a gold certificate, so this is what they would receive at the end. Now, all of you, anyone attending, is going to get an email from us, which will be a full 20-student license for Learning Upgrade. And it's good all the way till July 2016, so the entire school year. And you can enroll any student, any of those 20, into any of our math or ELA reading classes. Our courses cover all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade and even algebra. If you have a friend that wants a 20-student license, they can go to learningupgrade.com and get it. And then we'd love to hear from you, how your students do, how it helped them, room for improvement. It's a little bit over time, so I want to thank all of you for joining. We're going to have another webinar in January covering English learners and intervention. So we hope you can join us, and I want to thank you very much for joining this webinar. Goodbye.